Hello there, my name is Wajuna Edgar, and I am a data science and business analytics intern at the Sparks Foundation. I'm here to make a presentation on task 3, which is on exploratory data analysis, EDA. The aim of the task is to perform EDA on a sample Superstore data set. Here is the table of content from introduction to repository, data cleaning, exploratory data analysis, and answering the question, which is on trying to find out the weak areas where you can work to make more profit and what business problems can be derived by exploring the data. Here's a description of the data overview and data description. So the first thing I did was to import unnecessary libraries by creating a data frame s_data by reading the CSV file using the Panda CSV method, and also using s_data.head to check for the first 5 rows of the data set, and also s_data.tail to check for the last 5 rows of the data set. So if we were to make an assumption, it's safe to say that this data set has almost 10,000 rows. So the next thing I did is was to understand the data, which includes viewing all column titles in the data set. The keyword.columns gives the list of all columns in the data set. So the next thing was to give to describe the data using s_data.describe. This checks for the mean, the standard deviation, and the 5 summary of a numerical variable. The next thing I did was to check for the number of rows and columns. It shows that the data set has 9,994 rows and 13 columns. The next thing I did was to check for unique values under different columns from the ship mode up to the profit. And I also took the ship mode and checked for the unique values in that particular column. And here it is, the second class, standard class, first class, and same day. Next is the data cleaning. So the first thing I did was to check for the column information. It shows that the data set contains both categorically and numerical values. The categorical values are those that have objects as their D type, while the numerical values are those that have int 64 as their D type. So the next thing I checked was for missing values, which also shows if there are no values in the data set. So for this data set, there are no null values in it. The next thing I did was to check for duplicate values for each row, and it shows that there are no duplicate rows in the data set. So the next thing I did was to check for the data types of the columns. And here it shows that in this data set, just the postal code, sales, quantity, discount, profit are numerical variables, while ship mode, segments, countries, cities, states, region, category, and subcategory are categorical variables. So next thing I did was to drop unnecessary columns, having studied the data set, and I found out that the sample Superstore is located in the US, and the data set contains information about the United States. I decided that to remove that that column, since the country has since it has the same country all over. And then I also removed the postal code. So this shows the new column titles of the data set. And so the next is the exploratory data analysis, which aids to clean up the data set and improves the understanding of variables and their relationship. So the first thing I did was to understand the variables, and then I checked for numerical features in the data set using for quantity, sales, discount, and profit. So the above histogram shows the representation of numerical variables such as quantity, sales, discount, and profit. And it was created to visualize the variables, all these variables at once. So the next thing I did was to check the correlation matrix to show coefficient variables. rather to check and to use the correlation matrix to show coefficients between the variables using the heat map. From the above heat map, we can see that there is no correlation between profit and quantity, discount and quantity, discount and sales. We can also see that the weak positive correlation is between the profit and sales and quantity. We can also deduce that there is a weak negative correlation between discount and profit. Next thing I did was to use the pair plots to visualize the relationship between variables. The above shows the relationship between two numerical variables. As we can see, sales against profit, quantity against profit. So the next thing I did was to use a relation plot to show relationship between variables. I took the sales and profit against the different categories. So the above plots showed the relationship between different categories in the data set and profit and sales. So we can see that the technology category has the highest sales and profit. So the next thing I did was to check for the distribution in the data using the quantity column. The above graph shows the graphical distribution of quantity sold. The highest quantity sold is 2, as illustrated from this histogram chart. Next thing I did was to use box plots to check for the distribution of profits. From the above graph, we can see the amount of profits made by the Superstore, and it is illustrated that the most profits made is less than 2,000. Next thing I did was to check for the number of sales from different segments. The number of sales coming from the customer segment is 5,191, and the home office has the least number of sales, which is 1,783. I proceeded to plot a pie chart to show this representation in percentage. And we can also see that the consumer segment has the highest percentage of 51.9%. The next was to check the sales by region, and we can see from this bar chart that the highest region is the West region, and there are over 300 sales coming from that region. The next was to answer the question, like I pointed out earlier, which is trying to find out the weak areas to make more profit and what business problems can be derived by exploring the data. So I proceeded to check for the profit by state. And from this chart, we can see that the 15 highest making profits states are illustrated above. California makes the highest profit of over 70,000, but less than 80,000, followed by New York. It is also seen that there is a large drop in profit. And one thing the Superstore could do is to stop selling to states that make very little or no profits and focus on the profit-making states, which include California, New York, Washington, and Michigan. So the next thing I did was to check for relationship between quantity and discounts as against different segments. So from the charts, from the clustered charts, we can see that there's a positive linear relationship between discount and quantities. And then for the home office segments, it has the least amount of quantities and discounts. So one thing the Superstore could do is to introduce an incentive discount to consumers who purchase in large quantities from these segments, from this home office segment, to increase the quantity of goods bought. So the next thing I did was to check for sales and profit in different regions, and the West has the highest number of sales and profits, and then the South has the lowest number of sales and profits. So the Superstore could focus their sales on these top 3 profit-making regions. The next thing I did was to check for sales and profit of subcategory. So these are all the subcategories listed here. And from this, we can see that the profit and sales across different subcategories differ. Phones make the highest sales and profits, and while the tables, bookcases, and suppliers, although they make high sales, especially the table makes the highest sales, but then they make losses. The table has the highest losses. So the Superstore could remove the sales of bookcases, tables, and suppliers, as since they do not make any form of profit, so as not to get any more loss. So the next thing I did was to check profit by ship mode, and these are the ship modes, the mode of delivery, and the table above shows the different modes, different ship modes as a means of delivery. The highest profit comes from the standard class, and the least come from the same day. So in conclusion, at the moment, the Superstore does not have a high profit margin on their sales. There has been low profit on sales and a number of losses on sales. So one thing they could do is to add substitute products to products that make high profit at discounted prices. For example, for every customer that makes a purchase on phone, an ad could be sold alongside at a discounted price. Also, premium services could be placed on their delivery mode using the standard and second class, since they make the highest profits, so as to maximize profits. Finally, the West and East regions have the high number of sales and profits, and so priority should be given to states in this region. Thank you.